program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
For a minute, it seems like things were truly on the mend. Most economies are now fully open, COVID-19 related deaths have dropped, and some countries have now relaxed mandatorily wearing masks indoors. But as it turns out, that was just a calm before yet another storm in the form of the rise in the cost of living.
Our cost of living nowadays is too high. So, magorela gore le madi a ile go ramogela. Ga sa thola re leta gore di emotse re ka itepatepanya le tsone.
Kanya di price e re bolaile thata. Mo leng gore le rona re rana di khotlo gore ro oketse di price nyana even though re sa di oketsa thata.
We don't live in no man's land. We have to adjust the ka bophelo bontsheng ka teng because now everything is going to go up. Positive.
Me hela se se botoka ke gore le hatse le gone go nna le maano a mangwe le gore le ka tswa ka one go ka bona gore di emotse di ka re di batswa ka tsela ntse jang hela le ha ile gongwe re ka tswela rena re ntse re sokola.
And we have to go out there and work and grab each and every opportunity a government a tla a re fa. If you sit down no bonagana gore no government o ta dira sela go no go diragala.
As an after effect of the pandemic, inflation has gone up to the highest it's ever been, the consequences of which could have dire straits on most businesses, especially those in the SME space. While the rise in inflation was expected, not many could have foreseen that the tension between Russia and Ukraine would erupt to affect every economy in the world. Fuel prices have gone up and are expected to continue doing so. The cost of utilities such as water and electricity will also hike, and of course, food prices. No one knows when these tensions will end to possibly lower the cost of living, especially on fuel and the food basket, as Russia is one of the largest exporters of crude oil and wheat, and this war means an interruption to this economic activity. But in the meantime, how can you contain costs to successfully run your business or your home or both? Consumer rights activist at the consumer watchdog Richard Harriman is on First Issues. Today we're talking about containing costs, especially now when we're seeing insurmountable hikes in prices for essentially everything that we need to survive as humans and for our businesses to survive. So what would be the starting point, in your opinion, to contain costs for day-to-day operations?
I'm glad you didn't ask me for any good news because there isn't any. Look over the last couple of years of COVID and obviously recent political events and geopolitical events in Ukraine. We've seen petrol price, power price, VAT has gone up, food prices have gone up massively, inflation is now at 10-point-something%. I've been struggling to find some good news and I failed, there isn't any. Given that, and given that there's nothing that you or I, consumers, can do about these rising prices right now, the only area where we have some control is our spending, on our behaviour, on what we do with our money. And it's unpleasant to have to say it, but we really have to start thinking very carefully about where and how we spend our money. Because I don't know anyone who's got more money than they used to have anymore. We're all struggling. And as always, it's the poorest people who are struggling the most. But every one of us needs to start thinking very carefully about what our spending priorities are. We need to sacrifice some of the luxuries for a little while. Maybe things will be better in a year or two, I hope. But in the meantime, this is a time not for wasting money. This is a time for cutting back and spending a lot more sensibly and thinking very carefully, very critically about what our spending priorities are.
Let's talk about the scaling down, right? It seems like quite an obvious thing that people would need to do, but then it does not come naturally to them because, I don't know, maybe the shock of it or the discomfort. So then how would you say we can do that without necessarily causing that much discomfort or shock?
there's a few things we can all do that might be a little bit of a hassle but are worth it. First of all, shop around. It's surprising. If you go to 2 neighbouring supermarkets, the prices of individual items will be different, significantly different sometimes. And it's not always the obvious supermarkets that are cheaper than others. But the difficulty is that supermarket A will have this product cheaper and this one more expensive, but the opposite way around with different products. And can we really afford to spend all that time going between different supermarkets? But if you find a bargain, tell everyone you know. If you find something that's too expensive, tell everyone you know. Say, don't bother buying bread in that store, buy it in this store. And don't forget to tell the stores themselves, I'm not going to spend my money on this loaf of bread or this milk because you're so much more expensive than the neighbouring one. Maybe we can get some competition. So shop around and then tell everyone you know where the bargains can be found, because that will encourage more bargains. The other thing we can do is buy in bulk. Now, it's complicated. We found some onions, a 25 kilo bag of onions. Now, there's no way my small family can get through 25 kilos of onions, but what we should be doing is buying with our neighbours. So, the more you buy of something, the cheaper it gets so 25 kilos of onions is cheaper per kilo than 1 kilo. But who needs 25 kilos of onions? Buy with your neighbours, buy with your family members, buy with your workmates, buy with your friends. It's surprising how much money you will save. I know it's a bit of a hassle to be separating onions at the end of the day, but you can save quite a lot of money. When every tebby counts, those sort of things can save you quite a lot. Where possible, buy locally. Now, I know there's a big issue to do with import restrictions at the moment, and people have mixed feelings about that. But one thing it's forcing us to do is think about where products come from. I would much rather personally buy from a farmer that's local to me, than a farm on the other side of the planet. It's cheaper for me very often. I'm supporting my neighbours, and I'm also hopefully saving some money and saving the planet as well. Too much money is being spent on transporting goods from A to B, and every time they transport goods from A to B, there's petrol prices, there's aviation fuel prices, and those are skyrocketing. I really genuinely hope that the more we buy local, the better the deals we will get, the better the prices we will get. So there are some things we can do. There's no miracle cure to rising prices, but there are some things we can do that might make it a little bit easier for every one of us.
So in the grand scheme of things, how practical do you think are all of these tips really? Or are we just crossing our fingers that things would get better?
Oh, I'm certainly crossing my fingers and hoping things will get better. But I can't control petrol prices. I can't control, much as I would like to, what's happening in Ukraine right now. We have a choice as consumers. Do we just sit back and wring our hands and complain? Or do we do things to protect ourselves and the people we care about? And the thing I've learnt from these sort of situations is that the only way we get through them is as a community. As individuals, if we just sit back and whine, it's not going to help. If we take community action, looking after our neighbours, our family members, the people we care about, by buying collectively, by sharing ideas, growing some stuff in our own garden. Despite what some people think, we're a remarkably fertile country. We can grow stuff in our back gardens, even if it's a few tomatoes, even if it's some cabbage. We can grow some things at home. There are some things we can do that might just take the edge off the pain we're suffering right now. They really are.